What is going on YouTube? Edged Mindset. We're taking a look at, what is this? It's a horsey knife made in the US. This is a Hinderer. Hinderer, yes. So here's the deal. I haven't had a Hinderer in so long. And I didn't think I liked them, right? I didn't think I liked Hinderers. I was like, I don't really care for flippers that much. I don't like the handle shape. It kind of, let's be honest, especially on the XM-24, this is an XM-24, it kind of looks like a floppy wiener. I don't really care for that shape. I do like the Bowie or Bowie blade, but I stayed away from Hinderers. I got back into knives. I tinkered with Striders, got way into Microtechs, way into Medfords, a couple Spydercos here and there, CRK. I revisited all these brands and got into them. But I avoided the Hinderer. I just had no interest in them. And every once in a while, I'd kind of look at a few and I'm like, that's kind of cool. I like how they've been keeping up with modern features, putting in the lock bar, insert, tweaking the design, the tri-way system with the bearings. I was like, that's pretty cool that a knife from the big, the big three, right? So back in the day, and I mean that like 10 years ago, 9 years ago, the big three were Hinderer, Strider, and CRK. Those are the big USA-made three big companies, right? Those are like the big ones. And it was almost like a Twilight type thing, like were you team Hinderer, were you team Strider, were you team CRK? The reason those were the three big ones isn't because they were all super similar. It was really the opposite. It was kind of like they all three represented three distinct types of knives and three distinct types of users, all made in the US, all high quality. And so you would kind of pick which one you were. And I remember Hinderers, when they first came out, were freaking unable to get these things, man. I remember trying to get one so bad. I would call all my military friends, my police friends, be like, hey, I hear if you're military police, you can have a better chance of picking one up. Can you do that for me? I was just trying to score one. And I think I finally scored an XM-18 3.5, and I liked it. Then I think I sold it, and I think that's the only one I've ever had that's an official Hinderer knife. Now, I owned a lot of the Hinderer collaborations with like ZT. I enjoyed those a lot, but real Hinderer knives, I didn't have a lot. I had like the 3.5. And back in those days, any young people watching this is gonna blow your mind. Back in those days, flippers didn't really flip. They were still trying to figure it out, how to make a knife flip, especially in kind of these quote unquote higher quality handmade-ish type, mid-techy type knives. The original Hinderers were awful. They were measured, the flippability was measured by how much wrist you needed to open it. And the reason for that was they were running on washers. I think they were maybe nylon washers. Running on washers, the detents were super weak and poor. And just the machining, right? The machining wasn't precise. So everything was like a little rougher back in those days. Things weren't as smooth. Machining capability was not in its infancy, but like compared to what it is now, it's, doing things, manufacturing knives on a small batch kind of scale back then, the machining capability, it wasn't as good as it is now. You didn't have like the CNCs that you could just crank out precise things. So everything was a little bit rougher and it just didn't run as smooth. And I remember like as the first few gens started coming out of the XM-18, it was less and less wrist required to flip the thing open. It's like the first one was, man, you had to whip it out. You'd basically break the detent and then you would just fling it out with your wrist. And then it became like, well, if you just do it in a small motion, you could flip it open. And then it's cool to see now how this thing is like the smoothest. I couldn't believe it. I bought this kind of on a whim. I was like, you know what? I need to get a Hinderer. I like the Bowie. I like Jade. I like the classic stonewashed lock portion. I'm just going to go for it, pick one up, just have it in my collection. At least then I can, see if I like it still or whatever. And it'd be cool to just feature in some videos and do some comparisons and talking points and stuff, right? You know how you talk yourself into spending money you shouldn't spend money in, all those things. And I got it, and I wasn't super excited for it to come in, other than just, anytime something new that comes in is like cool. Wasn't super excited for it to come in, But then I open the package and oh, it's one of those weird ones. Like usually I know pretty well if I'm going to like something. Look how big that is. That's big. Usually I know if I'm going to like something or not. And, you know, there might be little variants. Like maybe I like it a little more than I thought, or maybe I like it a little less than I thought. It's kind of how these Something Obscenes, I thought I would like them more than I did. It was less than I did. This one, though, wasn't expecting much. And I'll be honest, like this is one of my favorite new pickups that I've received. And I'm not a flipper guy. I don't think I'm a flipper guy. But man, maybe I'm becoming a flipper guy. I'm not a bearing guy, but maybe I'm becoming a bearing guy. Something about this knife, the action on this thing, maybe it's the size. It's amazing. Like the way it flips, how smooth it is. I mean, I wasn't expecting it from Hinderer, right? Like I expect that from some of the higher end Chinese made knives and some of the customs, you know, some of the knives where that's their thing, you know, drop shutty, the Arius, right? Like the Arius, oh, it's drop shutty, it's so smooth. This is smoother than the Arius. Now, I know you're going to say, well, the blade is so much heavier, so of course it's going to drop shut. And that might be the case. But just like the action, this is better action in my opinion. It feels better. I'm not saying technically better or, you know, from a standpoint of engineering, it's better. It feels better to me than the Arius did, hands down. Like, oh, I just love it. And the other thing too is like the precision of the lockup. This is like the easiest lock to disengage. It's like featherweight, like no resistance. And yet it is completely rock solid. Like the geometry of that lock interface is like so perfect that you can tune this lock bar to be as light as it is without having any slip or any movement. And especially with steel on steel, like no stick. So you're not using titanium to kind of make up for sloppy geometry. The geometry on this is fantastic. And the other thing that kind of reminded me of Hinderers is I love this lock face. It always had like this cool, almost cyberpunk industrial type look to it. There's just something about it. It's so thick and you have so many textures, so many things going on, so many different surfaces. You have kind of this shininess of these screw female portions over here. You've got different screw types, which could be a critique, right? That is one of the things here. You've got like flathead, you've got Torx, you've got Phillips. It's like, what's going on here? But it looks cool, like to see these different things. And you could also say, it's kind of crappy that they sit so proud, right? Like these screw heads sit out. But visually, it looks cool. And it's only gotten more interesting with the lock bar insert coming in here. I like the Hinderer curving around here. All these things come flooding back as to why I like these in the first place. I even like the milling pattern inside this lock cut here. It just looks cool. And I think it looks the coolest on just the plain Jane stonewash finish compared to some of the other finishes and the colors and stuff. Just looks cool. And I also really like the Bowie blade. Like, it's just so wicked. Like, it just looks like a fighting knife. Ergonomics on this thing, outstanding. I mean, that's, you know, this is the shape that's best for the hand, right? And it feels so secure. Like, not only does it feel super comfortable, you've got jimping up here, blah, 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 but then, like, this just locks your hand in. Like, if there's ever a knife where I feel the most safe, like stabbing it into something, it's probably this one, because you're squeezing this lock bar to keep it locked. You've got this flipper tab here. Like, let's see if I can do this. So even if it came unlocked, like, it's not going to close on you as long as you've got a grip on it. It'll pinch your finger, but it's not going to close on you. It just feels so secure and feels so good. And this big, long 4-inch blade is just awesome. The choil, perfectly sized, not too big, not too small. Really cool knife. And it really made me think, like, I don't know, I guess I like Hinderers. I'm not sure. I just really dig this knife. And it was a big surprise to me. I didn't think I would. Now, there are some critiques on this, aside from just general, right? I'm not saying, like, you know, you can critique anything, but I believe this still uses a steel detent ball. I don't like that. I like ceramic. Why use steel? It's going to wear out. Just use ceramic. It'll last forever. Just use ceramic. So I wish I had a ceramic detent ball. The detents, I want to say it's a little light for me, but not for any like real reason, right? Like I can't really shake it. If I give it a good whack, it'll come off. Fires like a demon, but I don't know. I wish the detent was tuned a little harder. I can probably get that by just tightening up this lock bar though, if I wanted to. Just put a little more tension on it, and it would probably. Let's see if I can squeeze the lock bar. That gets, yeah. So that adds more tension to it. So I could do that. But man, I wish I had a ceramic detent ball. It's one of those things, like one of those criteria that I really like now that I never used to care about. Ceramic detent ball. Other than that, the tri-way thing's a cool concept. I'm like, just do bearings though. I don't know. But I guess it's, some people like running Teflon or bronze phosphorus, and that's cool. I get that. For me, the tri-way thing, I'm like, I just put bearings in it and I'm good. For a knife like this, I'm fine running bearings. Manual knives, I prefer washers, but bearings are cool too. And other than that, man, I love it. I love the jade. I didn't like the jade on my Chavez where it was PVD, everything else with the jade looked goofy, but jade on stonewash stainless and raw titanium just looks so cool. You can see like some of the stuff shining through. You can see the pivot kind of coming through. It gets a little dirty, but you can clean it up. Really like the look of that. So I'm debating if I want to try to get an XM-18, or maybe I like this because it's the 24. I've never had a 24 and I like the larger size. But all right, guys. So first impression of the XM-24 from Hinderer. I think it's great. Let's talk steel real quick. This is CPM 20 CV. Hinderer runs their stuff a little soft, similar to Medford, right? And they say it's done on purpose for ease of sharpening and for toughness. That's up to you to decide if you care about that or not. We could talk philosophy of use in terms of what is this knife for? Why would you make a choice like that? I can see validity on both sides. Part of me is like, well, I want the steel to perform the best it possibly can, but I also understand the fact that, this knife is not a workhorse cutter. That's not really what it's for. It's more of a defensive style all-purpose knife. And so you could argue that running it a little soft so that it doesn't chip or break and it's easier to sharpen makes more sense than having a super hard steel. That's the opposite of that. For something like that, maybe you would have, something like this. Like, this is a cutter, right? This is designed for cutting and slicing, and it's really good at it. Spyderco runs their steels really hardened appropriately for that, and they get the most out of their steels. So if you're going to be doing a lot of cutting, then yeah, this probably, the XM-24 is probably not your top choice. But for me, I think it's really cool, and I might have to get another one. All right, guys. I'm out. You take it easy. Catch you later.